Good morning, I'm Harriet Agbenyi. This is Business Morning on Channels Television. We're back in the nation's commercial capital, Lagos. Thank you so much for staying with us. 3 days of focused conversations on Made in Nigeria ended in the nation's capital, Abuja, on Wednesday, with a firm resolve to do the needful in key industries and sectors, particularly now that the government is focusing on how best to get the country out of recession. Remember that, of course, it's no longer news, actually, that with contraction, 2 straight contractions, Nigeria is firmly in a recession. And so there were focused conversations with ministers of key industries, with the vice president. The president, Muhammadu Buhari, was there on the first day to kickstart the event, showing very clearly how much the federal government intends to partner with the private sector, because looking at those key industries, it is a private sector that actually grows those industries. And so there was focused conversations on the Nigerian economy, how to break through the macroeconomic headwinds, of course, taking a look at technology and innovations, how best they can harness innovations and technology in terms of making improved innovations. There was also a roundtable conversation on job creation, skills gap and employment. That's actually what's going to be the focus on the program much later. Still taking the conversation from where it started off in the nation's capital, Abuja, with the vice president, some captains of industry, and of course some state governors looking at the issues and looking at how best to dialogue and how best to sort them out at this time. There were different sessions that focused on the manufacturing sector, agro-processing, services, creative industry, the ICT, micro and small enterprises, as well as inventors and innovators. Another very key issue that was raised, of course, during all the conversations at this 22nd Nigeria Economic Summit, actually focused on Made in Nigeria, was the ease of doing business. How easy is it for you to even register a business? It doesn't matter how small your company is. The hurdles that you face, the tax that you have to pay, getting space to even do your business, and even being able to operate in a conducive environment. All of these issues were raised at this 3-day summit, and of course a communique was raised at the end of the summit and presented to the federal government. So the think tank, the Nigeria Economics Summit Group, actually says for the next 1 year, they've got this timeline that they expect all of these decisions that were reached, or all the conversations and the action plans that were raised at this economic summit, to see how much has been implemented. And so we also will be keeping our eye on the NESG and trying to get reports on how much has been implemented since the summit ended. So we'll be focusing on one of the key issues that was raised, and that is job creation. At this time, we see unemployment at 13.3%, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. So in terms of how to quickly begin to address some of the issues that was raised, the major one, which was skills gap, I'll be talking to Michael Adele, who is a human capital development consultant, much later on the program. We'll be reviewing some of the issues that have actually come up in conversations that were held in the last 3 days and over time, and the best solutions for them. But let's see some trending stories for this hour. The central bank has given a clearer picture of the state of commercial banks, saying that the lenders remain well capitalized, in contrast to a Dubai-based Arkham Capital report. The Director of Banking Supervision, Mrs. Tokumbo Martins, debunked the report yesterday at a briefing on the 329th Bankers Committee meeting in Lagos. Among other issues addressed by Mrs. Martins was the fact that the central bank has agreed with banks to commence enforcement on the annual withdrawal limit of $50,000 of the financial industry. Let's listen.
Now, one of the things that we issued, I'm sure you must have, one of the things that we discussed, you must have been hearing a lot about impending retrenchments in the banking industry. So we've received, so many complaints, people expressing fears about this and all that. We discussed it among the banks, and the banks have committed to not retrenching, and they never had such plans. So whatever rumors have been flying around about there's mass retrenchment, that's happening or going to happen is not true. That one we confirmed today. And then another thing that we discussed, you will recall that some time ago in CBN's bid to manage demand of Forex, there was a rule that was put in place that people are not allowed to withdraw more than $50,000 across the industry on their Naira debit cards. Now, for a while now, people have been breaching that rule. The CBN hadn't taken any steps until now, but we have decided that it's now time for people, for us to take, to take steps to stop this. So we want members of the public to remember that that rule is in place. All your cards are linked to a particular BVN. Now that BVN is only allowed to withdraw $50,000. If people, a year per annum, if people continue to breach that rule, they will lose access to this money. In fact, they will lose access to the foreign exchange market entirely. 7 banks are undercapitalized is absolutely not true. Now, that is not to say that the bank is not having, that the banking sector is not having, is not feeling the headwinds, the economic headwinds, but so is every other jurisdiction. It's not strange. So non-performing loans at 11%, that is not what we need to focus on. What we need to focus on is that, okay, so we have 11% as non-performing loans. Do the banks have the capacity to absorb any losses that would arise from those loans? And the answer is that yes, they do. They have very strong capital buffers. And I think I've said this thing repeatedly. Another thing that's important is that the banks have very huge capacity to generate income. So apart from the capital buffers that they already have, they also have capacity to generate income to also absorb those losses if they do arise. And then the loans are non-performing. Can they reperform? Yes, they will, because the underlying assets are still there and they are good. So I think we should totally dispel or ignore this kind of story. It's not a story that we should take seriously at all. The fact that a country has non-performing loans at a period like this is to be expected, and I don't think that any jurisdiction should be demonized because of it. I mean, if you look at other jurisdictions that are going through the same circumstances that we are going through, they are experiencing the same thing. There are jurisdictions that have NPLs as high as 15% to 35%. Some countries in Europe have NPLs as high as 18%. So what are we talking about here? So I think we need to ignore it entirely.
Director of Banking Supervision with the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mrs. Tokunbo Martins, they're debunking some of the rumors that, of course, have dominated the social media, on media in general, giving a very clear picture of the state of commercial banks, and the banks have no plans to cut jobs, at least not just yet. Now, another one of the highlights of the Bankers Committee meeting was a decision by lenders to pay more attention to the state of industrialists in the country. The Deputy Managing Director of Guarantee Trust Bank, Ms. Kathy Chozo, explains the outcome of the bankers' meeting with the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria.
One of the things that we achieved today was a meeting with a team from Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN. Before we went into the session at the Bankers Committee proper, the management of Central Bank, as well as bank CEOs, had a meeting with a team from MAN. As you know, our manufacturers are a critical stakeholder for our country. These are companies that employ tens of thousands of people. They produce very essential things that we need for our daily lives. And some of them, a good number of them, also export, so also generate foreign currency. So we discussed how to improve supply of foreign exchange to our manufacturers, the lifeblood of this country, of our economy, so that they can continue to produce, so that they don't lay off, so they can also achieve, good cost, a good level of costing for the products that you and I all use. So it was a very fruitful meeting. We came to some decisions that we are confident will help this critical sector, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Thank you.